The day my father betrayed me started like any other family gathering, with fake smiles and hollow pleasantries. I stood in our family's grand living room, watching my stepmother Meredith arrange fresh-cut roses in an antique vase, while my father paced near his mahogany desk, checking his watch every few minutes. My name is Jessica, and I'd spent the last 3 years working alongside my father at his company, learning every aspect of the business he'd promised would one day be mine. That promise died today. "Everyone please sit down," my father announced, his voice carrying that authoritative tone I'd grown up respecting. "I have an important announcement to make." Quentin, my stepbrother, sprawled across the leather armchair with a smug expression that made my stomach turn. At 22, he'd never worked a day in his life, preferring to spend his time partying and posting about his entrepreneurial mindset on Instagram. "As you know," my father continued, "I've been considering the future of our family business." He smiled at Meredith, who beamed back at him. "After careful consideration, I've decided to transfer majority ownership and control to Quentin." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the armrest of the sofa, my knuckles turning white. "What?" The word came out as a whisper. "It makes perfect sense," Meredith chimed in, placing her hand on Quentin's shoulder. "A fresh perspective is exactly what the company needs." "Dad?" I managed to say, fighting to keep my voice steady. "We talked about this. I've been working there for 3 years. I have an MBA. I know every client, every supplier. Jessica, please." My father cut me off, raising his hand. "This decision wasn't made lightly. Quentin has some innovative ideas that align better with our future vision." Quentin leaned forward, his designer watch glinting in the afternoon light. "Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure to keep you on in some capacity. Maybe in HR?" I stood up abruptly, my legs shaking. "Some capacity? Dad, you promised me. You said when I finished my MBA. "Things change, Jessica," Meredith interrupted. "We have to think about what's best for the family." "The family?" I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "I am your family. I'm your daughter. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. You'll still receive your salary, of course, but Quentin will be taking over as CEO next month." "Next month?" The room started spinning. "You've already decided everything?" "The paperwork is being finalized," my father said, finally looking at me. "I'm sorry if this disappoints you, but it's what's best for everyone." I grabbed my purse, nearly knocking over a side table in my haste. "Congratulations, Quentin," I managed to say, proud that my voice didn't crack. "I hope you enjoy running the company I spent 3 years helping to build." "Jessica, don't be dramatic," Meredith called after me as I headed for the door. "This is exactly why we needed someone more level-headed in charge." I paused at the doorway, turning back one last time. "Dad?" He still wouldn't look at me. "We can discuss this later, Jessica." "No," I said quietly. "We won't." I walked out of that house with my head held high, waited until I reached my car, and then let the tears fall. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend Lucy. "How did it go?" I started the engine, my vision blurring. "They gave everything to Quentin," I typed back. "Everything I worked for, everything Dad promised me." Lucy's response was immediate. "I'm coming over. Don't do anything stupid before I get there." As I drove away from my childhood home, I caught a glimpse of my father watching from the window. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something flicker across his face. Regret, maybe. But then Meredith appeared beside him, and he turned away. 3 years of my life. 3 years of early mornings, late nights, missed vacations, and cancelled dates. 3 years of learning every aspect of the business, of earning the respect of our employees and clients. All of it handed to Quentin on a silver platter because his mother had wormed her way into my father's life and convinced him that her precious son deserved my inheritance. My phone buzzed again. "Lucy, we'll figure this out. You're not alone." I took a deep breath, wiping away the last of my tears. Lucy was right. This wasn't over. I might have lost my inheritance, but I hadn't lost my knowledge, my experience, or my determination. They wanted to push me aside? Fine. But they were about to learn that I was my father's daughter in more ways than one, and I didn't give up without a fight. 3 days after my world imploded, I sat in Virgil's law office, surrounded by towering bookshelves and the smell of old leather. The family lawyer had known me since I was in pigtails, and his familiar, weathered face showed genuine concern as I recounted what had happened. "I just don't understand," I said, twisting a tissue in my hands. "How could he legally do this? I thought the company was meant to be split between any children." Virgil removed his reading glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Your father restructured the company ownership last year. As majority shareholder, he had the right to transfer his shares to whoever he chose. Last year?" The betrayal cut deeper. So he'd been planning this? "Jessica." Virgil hesitated, then stood up and walked to a large filing cabinet. "There's something else you should know. Something about your grandmother's will. My grandmother had passed away 5 years ago, leaving everything to my father. Or so I'd thought." Virgil returned with a thick folder, placing it on his desk with careful precision. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, and she was, let's say, prescient about certain possibilities." He pulled out a document and handed it to me. "There's a clause here that your father doesn't know about. Your grandmother set up a trust fund in your name, with very specific conditions." My hands shook as I read the paper. $2 million, I whispered. "But why didn't I know about this?" "The clause stipulated that you could only access the money if you started your own successful business by the age of 30. Your grandmother believed in entrepreneurship, not just inheritance. She wanted her legacy to inspire creation, not dependence." I sat back, stunned. "Does my father know about this?" Virgil shook his head. "No. Your grandmother was very clear. This information was to be revealed only to you, and only if you were ever disinherited from the family business." "She knew," I breathed. Somehow she knew something like this might happen. "Your grandmother watched your father marry Meredith," Virgil said quietly. "She had concerns." My phone buzzed. Another message from Lucy, asking how the meeting was going. I ignored it, focusing on the document in my hands. "What qualifies as a successful business?" I asked. "According to the terms, you need to show a profitable quarter within your first year of operation. The business must be entirely yours, no family involvement." I let out a shaky laugh. "No risk of that anymore?" "There's more," Virgil said, pulling out another document. "Your grandmother left detailed records of various business contacts, potential opportunities, even market research she'd conducted. She wanted to give you tools, not just money. Why didn't she just tell me all this before she died? She believed you needed to find your own path first." Her words were, "Jessica needs to understand what it means to lose everything before she can truly build something of her own." I stood up and walked to the window, watching traffic flow below. $2 million, I repeated. "That's enough to start something real." "It is," Virgil agreed. "But Jessica, this won't be easy. Starting a business never is, trust fund or not." I turned back to him, feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. Nothing worth doing ever is, right? There's one more thing, Virgil said, his expression serious. If you accept this challenge, you can't tell anyone about the trust fund. Not your father, not Meredith, not even Lucy. The money must appear to come from your own savings and investors. Your grandmother was adamant about this. Why? She wanted your success to be yours alone. No one could claim they helped you, or that you had an unfair advantage. I nodded slowly, a plan already forming in my mind. Can I take these documents to review? Of course. Virgil gathered them into a folder. Jessica, your grandmother believed in you. She saw something in you that reminded her of herself. As I stood to leave, Virgil called after me. One last thing. Meredith called yesterday, asking if you'd been here. She seemed concerned about any potential legal action. I smiled, thinking of my stepmother's worried face. Let her worry. I've got better things to focus on now. Walking out of the office building, I finally replied to Lucy's messages. Meet me for coffee. I've got an idea. My grandmother had given me more than money. She'd given me a chance to prove myself, to build something of my own. And unlike the inheritance my father had promised, this was something no one could take away from me. I looked up at the sky, silently thanking my grandmother for her foresight. She'd known I might need an escape route, and she'd provided one, but only if I was willing to work for it. Challenge accepted, Grandma. An eco-friendly business? Lucy stirred her latte, raising an eyebrow. That's quite a pivot from corporate finance. We sat in our favourite coffee shop, laptops open, surrounded by the buzz of afternoon customers. I'd spent the last hour outlining my ideas, careful to avoid mentioning the trust fund. Think about it, I said, turning my laptop to show her my research. The market for sustainable products is exploding. People want to feel good about their purchases, but they don't want to sacrifice quality or convenience. Lucy leaned forward, scanning the screen. And you're thinking, what exactly? Salt biodegradable packaging solutions for businesses. Everything from takeout containers to shipping materials. I pulled up another tab. Did you know most companies want to go green, but can't find reliable suppliers? The few that exist charge astronomical prices. And you think you can do better? I know I can. I opened my spreadsheet. I've already found 3 potential manufacturers who can produce at scale. If we can streamline the supply chain and build direct relationships with businesses, we could revolutionize the industry. Lucy's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. Heads up. Quentin's been asking around about you. Apparently, Meredith's worried you're planning some kind of legal action. Let them worry, I said, thinking of the folder from Virgil, sitting safely in my apartment. I've got bigger plans. Speaking of plans, Lucy said, lowering her voice, how are you going to fund this? Starting a business isn't cheap, and you just lost your job. I'd prepared for this question. I've got savings, and I'm planning to approach investors. My experience at Dad's company gives me credibility. Jess, Lucy hesitated. Are you sure you're not just doing this to prove something to your father? I'm doing this for me, I replied firmly. Dad made his choice. Now I'm making mine. The coffee shop door chimed, and I froze as Quentin walked in, wearing his usual designer outfit that screamed, "Trust fund, baby." He spotted us and sauntered over, pulling up a chair without asking. Well, well, he smirked. Planning your next career move? I heard HR is hiring. I closed my laptop slowly. Actually, I'm starting my own company. His laugh was sharp. You? A company? With what money? That's none of your business. Lucy cut in, her tone icy. Look, sis. Quentin leaned forward, his voice dripping with fake concern. Why don't you come back to the company? I could use someone with your administrative skills. I appreciate the offer, I said, keeping my voice steady. But I'll pass. Some of us prefer to build something of our own, rather than having it handed to us. His smile faltered. Dad's worried about you, you know. He thinks you're not thinking clearly. Dad lost the right to worry about me when he gave you everything he promised me. I started packing up my things. Tell him I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Whatever you're planning, Quentin called as we stood to leave. It won't work. You're not cut out for this. I turned back, meeting his gaze. Watch me. Outside, Lucy linked her arm through mine. You know what? I'm in. Whatever you need, market research, networking, anything. Let's show them what you can do. I hugged her, grateful for her support. First step, we need to find office space, something professional, but not too expensive. Already on it. Lucy pulled out her phone. There's a new co-working space downtown. Very eco-friendly. They might even become your first client. As we walked, I spotted my reflection in a store window. I looked different somehow. Stronger, more determined. My grandmother had built her own empire from nothing. Now it was my turn. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Quentin says you're starting a business. Let's talk about this. Come to dinner tomorrow? I showed Lucy the message. She snorted. He's probably worried you'll become competition. Not yet, I replied, typing out a response. Can't make dinner? Too busy building my future. I hit send and turned off my phone. You know, Lucy said as we reached her car, your grandmother would be proud of you, if only she knew how right she was. I smiled, thinking of the trust fund waiting to be activated. But first, I had to prove I could do this on my own terms. Come on, I said, getting into the passenger seat. Let's go look at that office space. I've got some ideas for the pitch deck we need to create. As we drove away, I caught sight of Quentin watching us from the coffee shop window. Let him watch. Let them all watch. They thought they'd knocked me down, but they'd actually set me free. And I was going to soar. Your samples look impressive. Sarah, the restaurant chain executive, turned the biodegradable container in her hands. But how can you guarantee consistent supply? We've been burned before by startups that couldn't deliver. I sat in her sleek downtown office 3 months into building my company, Green Shift Solutions. The meeting was my biggest pitch yet. A potential contract that could make or break us. We've already secured partnerships with 3 manufacturing facilities, I replied, pulling up the supply chain presentation on my tablet. I can show you our production capacity projections. I've seen the numbers, Sarah interrupted. What I need to know is why I should trust you over established suppliers. I leaned forward. Because unlike them, we're not just selling products. We're offering a complete packaging transition solution, including staff training and waste management consultation. Plus, our prices are 20% lower. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. 20%? How? Streamlined operations and direct manufacturer relationships. No middlemen. I didn't mention the trust fund that had helped secure those relationships. We can start with a trial run if you prefer. Before Sarah could respond, my phone buzzed. Quentin's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. Family business? Sarah asked, noticing my expression. Former family business, I corrected. I'm building something new now. She nodded slowly, then reached for the contract. Let's start with a 3-month trial. 2 locations. If it works out, we'll discuss expanding to all 30 restaurants. My heart soared, but I kept my expression professional as we shook hands. Outside her office, I finally let myself smile. Our first major client. My phone buzzed again. Quentin had left a voicemail. Against my better judgment, I played it. "Hey, sis. Heard you're making waves in the eco-friendly space. Let's grab coffee. I have a proposition that could benefit us both." I deleted the message and called Lucy instead. "We got it," I announced when she picked up. "The restaurant chain contract. I knew you would." Lucy cheered. "This calls for celebration. Drinks tonight? Can't. Meeting with potential investors tomorrow morning. Rain check? You're working too hard." Lucy sighed. "But I get it. Just don't forget to—" She was cut off by another incoming call. My father this time. I ignored it. "Still not talking to them?" Lucy asked. "Nothing to say." I reached my car, juggling my phone and briefcase. They made their choice. I'm making mine. Back at our small office in the co-working space, I found Quentin waiting by my desk. He wore his usual smirk, but something about his expression seemed forced. "Nice setup." He gestured around the modern space. "Very modest." "What do you want, Quentin? Can't a brother check on his sister?" He perched on my desk. "Actually, I have a business proposal. Dad's company is looking to go green. Good PR, you know. We could use your services." I stared at him. "You want me to supply packaging to the company you stole from me?" "Come on, Jess. It's just business. Think about it. Guaranteed contracts. Stable income. Dad feels bad about how things turned out. This could be a way to keep you in the family business." "I have my own family business now," I replied, setting down my briefcase. "And we're doing just fine without your help." "Are you?" He picked up a prototype container. "These startup costs must be killing you. Where'd you get the capital anyway? That's none of your concern." I took the container from his hands. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." "Dad's not going to like this," Quentin called as I walked him to the door. "He thinks you're being stubborn." Dad lost the right to an opinion about my choices. I held the door open pointedly. "Send my regards to Meredith." After he left, I sank into my chair, hands shaking slightly. They were getting nervous. Good. The restaurant chain contract would be announced next week, and then everyone would know Green Shift Solutions was a serious player. My phone lit up with a text from Sarah. "Contract signed and sent to your lawyer. Looking forward to working together." I smiled, thinking of my grandmother. She'd built her empire from nothing, facing much bigger obstacles than I was. The trust fund helped, but the vision, the work, the determination, that was all me. Opening my laptop, I began preparing for tomorrow's investor meeting. Let Quentin run my father's company into the ground. I was building something better, something sustainable, in every sense of the word. The future was green, and I was going to lead the way. Not as my father's daughter or Quentin's stepsister, but as my own person, as my grandmother's granddaughter. The Sustainability Conference Hall buzzed with energy as I finished setting up our Green Shift Solutions booth. 6 months of hard work had led to this moment, our official launch into the broader market. Press badges mingled with corporate name tags in the growing crowd. "Hi, everything looks perfect." Lucy adjusted our banner. "The prototypes are getting a lot of attention already." A reporter from the Business Weekly approached, notebook in hand. "Ms. Jessica, I'd love to get your thoughts on disrupting the sustainable packaging industry." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Disrupting? That's a bit ambitious, isn't it?" Quentin stood there, wearing a suit that probably cost more than our booth rental. Behind him, my father and Meredith lingered, watching the scene unfold. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Industry events, sis. Open to all players." Quentin picked up one of our display containers, though calling these revolutionary seems like a stretch. We're launching our own eco-friendly line next quarter, actually. The reporter's pen moved quickly across her notepad. Mr. Quentin, you're saying your company is entering the sustainable packaging market as well? Indeed, he smiled. With our resources and established client base, we'll be able to offer much more competitive pricing then. Smaller operations. Lucy stepped forward, but I touched her arm. Actually, I said to the reporter, I'd love to discuss our recent contract with national restaurant chain. They chose us specifically for our innovative approach and cost-effective solutions. The reporter's eyes widened. National restaurant chain. That's a significant account for a new company. We've also secured partnerships with 3 major retail chains. I continued, watching Quentin's smirk fade. Would you like to see our impact projections? Jessica, my father stepped forward, his voice low. Can we talk privately? Sorry, Dad. I'm busy with potential clients. I turned back to the reporter. Shall we discuss those projections? As I walked away with the reporter, I heard Meredith whisper. How did she land those contracts so quickly? The next hour flew by in a whirlwind of interviews and demonstrations. Our booth drew consistent crowds, especially after the Business Weekly tweeted about our national restaurant chain partnership. This is going better than we hoped. Lucy beamed, handling another inquiry. We've got 5 potential clients wanting meetings next week. I spotted Quentin arguing with my father near the entrance, gesturing angrily in my direction. Moments later, he stormed over to our booth. Real cute, he spat. You just had to steal the spotlight, didn't you? Steal? I laughed. Like you stole my inheritance? That company was handed to me fair and square. Exactly. I met his gaze. Nothing in your life was earned, Quentin. That's the difference between us. You think you're so clever? He lowered his voice. But where did you get the startup money, huh? Dad's been asking questions. Something doesn't add up. Sounds like a you problem. I turned to greet another potential client, but Quentin grabbed my arm. Listen, you little... Is there a problem here? A tall man in an expensive suit interrupted. I'm Thomas from Eco Retail Group. We're very interested in your products, Jessica. But if this isn't a good time... Quentin released my arm, forcing a smile. No problem at all. Just a family discussion. Former family, I corrected, extending my hand to Thomas. Shall we discuss your packaging needs? As I led Thomas to our meeting area, I caught sight of my father watching from across the hall. For a moment, our eyes met. He looked older somehow, worried. Meredith whispered something in his ear, and they turned to leave. Impressive operation you've built, Thomas commented, reviewing our catalogue. Your grandmother would be proud. I froze. You knew my grandmother? He smiled. Margaret was a force of nature. We served on several boards together. She always said her granddaughter would shake things up someday. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. I hope I'm living up to her expectations. From what I've seen today, you're exceeding them. He pulled out a business card. Let's set up a proper meeting. Eco Retail Group has over 200 stores that need sustainable packaging solutions. By the end of the day, we'd collected more business cards than I could count. Lucy hugged me as we packed up the booth. You showed them, she said. You showed everyone. I watched Quentin leave with his tail between his legs, no doubt heading back to report our success to my father. Let them worry, let them wonder. My phone buzzed with a text from Virgil. Your grandmother's trust fund is officially activated. First profitable quarter confirmed. Congratulations. I smiled, tucking the phone away. The money had helped, but today's success? That was all mine. And this was just the beginning. Green Shift Solutions announces third consecutive quarter of growth. Lucy read from her tablet, feet propped on my new office desk. Eco-friendly packaging startup disrupts industry with innovative solutions. I gazed out the floor-to-ceiling windows of our downtown headquarters, still amazed at how far we'd come in 18 months. Read the part about the expansion again. Under CEO Jessica's leadership, the company has secured contracts with major retailers and restaurants nationwide, with plans to expand internationally by next quarter. The door burst open, and Maria, our office manager, rushed in. "Jessica, you need to see this." She handed me her phone, displaying a breaking news article. Joseph Industries stock plummets amid environmental violations and mismanagement concerns. Your father's company? Lucy leaned over my shoulder to read. Oh, wow, this is bad. The article detailed how my father's company had been caught disposing of toxic materials illegally, trying to cut costs after several quarters of declining profits. Quinton's leadership was specifically mentioned as a factor in the company's downturn. My phone started ringing. Meredith's number. I declined the call. "They're saying the fines could be in the millions," Maria added, "plus the cleanup costs." Another call, my father this time. I sent it to voicemail. Lucy sat up straight. "You don't think they'll try to come to me for help?" I finished. "They already are." I showed them my phone's screen, displaying a text from Quinton. "Need to talk. Family emergency, please." "What are you going to do?" Lucy asked quietly. Before I could answer, Maria's phone buzzed. "They're in the lobby," she said. "Your father and Quinton. Should I send them away?" I thought about all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep after they took my inheritance, about Quinton's smug face at every industry event, about my father's silence when I needed him most. No, I decided. Send them up. 5 minutes later, they stood in my office, looking distinctly uncomfortable. My father had aged years and months, and Quinton's designer suit couldn't hide his desperation. "Nice office," my father said, looking around. "You've done well for yourself. What do you want?" Quinton stepped forward. "We need your help. The environmental violations. They happened under the old system before we took over, but you covered them up instead of fixing them." I finished. I saw the report. "The fines will bankrupt us," my father said quietly. "We need a partner with experience in sustainable practices. Someone who can help us transition and rebuild trust." "And you thought of me?" I laughed. "How convenient." "Look," Quinton's voice cracked. "I know I was. We were wrong. About everything. You clearly know what you're doing. We're offering you a chance to come back. To be part of the family business again." "Part of the family business?" I stood up. "You mean the business you stole from me? The one you've run into the ground?" "Jessica, please." My father stepped forward. "We're family. Family." I walked around my desk. Where was family when you gave everything to Quinton? Where was family when he tried to sabotage my company? Where was family when Meredith spread rumors about my funding sources? They both had the grace to look ashamed. "I built this company from nothing," I continued. "No family connections, no inherited clients, just hard work and vision, something neither of you would understand." "We can offer you majority shares," Quinton said desperately. "Whatever you want." "I don't want your failing company," I replied. "I have my own." My father sank into a chair. "Without help, we'll lose everything." "Like I lost everything?" I pressed a button on my desk. "Maria, please show them out." "Jessica." My father stood, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I'm sorry for everything. I made a terrible mistake. For a moment, I felt my resolve waver. Then I remembered my grandmother's words in her will. Jessica needs to understand what it means to lose everything before she can truly build something of her own. I'm sorry too, Dad, I said softly, but you made your choice. Now you have to live with it. After they left, Lucy hugged me. Are you okay? I looked around my office, at the awards on the walls, the growing team beyond my door, the skyline view I'd earned through my own efforts. You know what? I smiled. I really am. My phone buzzed with another text from Quinton. Please reconsider. We need you. I deleted it without responding. They'd needed me before, when I was working 80-hour weeks learning the business. They'd needed me when I brought in new clients and modernized systems. They just hadn't valued me. Now they could watch as their company crumbled while mine soared. Sometimes karma worked in perfect ways. The news of Joseph Industries' bankruptcy splashed across every business publication. I sat in my office, scrolling through the headlines. Family company collapses. Environmental violations lead to corporate downfall. CEO Quinton steps down amid crisis. A knock on my door interrupted my reading. Maria poked her head in. Your father's here again. Third time this week. I sighed, closing my laptop. Send him in. He entered slowly, looking nothing like the powerful businessman I'd grown up admiring. His suit hung loose on his frame, his hair now more grey than black. The house is being sold, he said without preamble, sinking into the chair across from me. Meredith's filing for divorce. I heard. I kept my voice neutral. Where's Quinton? Dubai, supposedly, trying to secure investors. He laughed bitterly. No one will touch us now. I poured 2 cups of coffee, sliding one across to him. Why are you here, Dad? I had a lot of time to think lately, he said, staring into the cup. About choices, about legacy. Your grandmother would be so disappointed in me. Probably, I agreed. She believed in earning success, not handing it over, like you did. He gestured at my office. 2 years ago, I thought I was protecting the company by giving it to Quinton. I convinced myself he had the right qualities, that you were too emotional. And now? Now I watch you in the news, leading the industry, changing how business is done. He looked up, eyes glistening. You did everything I always wanted for the company, just without me. I had help, I said, thinking of my grandmother's trust fund. Just not from you. The trust fund? He nodded. Virgil finally told me about it last week. Mother always was 3 steps ahead of everyone. I froze. You know about that? She set it up right after I married Meredith. He smiled sadly. She saw what I couldn't or wouldn't. That I was letting my new wife influence my judgment, letting her push you out. It wasn't just Meredith, I said quietly. You made your choices, Dad. I did. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. That's why I'm here. These are my remaining shares in Joseph Industries. They're not worth much now, but... He slid the envelope across my desk. They should go to you. They always should have been yours. I stared at the envelope. I don't want them. I know. He stood up. But I need you to have them, not to save the company. It's too late for that. But because they belong to you. Because I was wrong. Dad, you know what the worst part is? He moved to the window, looking out at the city, watching you succeed without me. Knowing I could have been part of something extraordinary if I'd just believed in my own daughter. I joined him at the window. I would have made you proud. You did make me proud, Jessica. Just not the way I expected. He turned to face me. You built something better than I ever could. You did it your way. The right way. Yo, is that why Meredith's leaving? Because you lost everything? He shook his head. She's leaving because Quentin emptied their accounts before he fled. Like mother, like son, I suppose. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. What will you do now? Start over. Get a small apartment. Maybe consult, if anyone will hire me. He straightened his tie. I'm not here to ask for help, Jessica. I just needed you to know that I understand now. And I'm sorry. As he turned to leave, I called out, Dad? He paused at the door. There's a coffee shop around the corner. They make decent breakfast sandwiches. If you wanted to, maybe next week? A small smile crossed his face. I'd like that. After he left, I opened the envelope, looking at the worthless shares of my father's fallen company. Then I glanced at my own company's latest financial reports. Another record quarter. Lucy burst in. Did I just see your dad leaving? Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, and meant it. Actually, I'm better than fine. What did he want? I tucked the envelope into my desk drawer. To admit he was wrong. To say he's proud of me. And are you going to help him? I thought about my grandmother, about legacy, about earning success. No, I said finally, but I might have breakfast with him next week. Lucy smiled. Your grandmother would approve of that. Looking out at my growing empire, I knew she was right. Sometimes karma wasn't about revenge. It was about finding your own path, even when others tried to block it. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was about being strong enough to listen when those who wronged you finally admitted their mistakes. The autumn breeze rustled through the cemetery as I placed fresh flowers on my grandmother's grave. The marble headstone gleamed in the morning sun. Her name etched an elegant script. I brought someone to see you, Grandma, I said softly, stepping aside as my father approached. He placed his own bouquet beside mine, his hands trembling slightly. We'd been meeting for breakfast every Wednesday for the past month, slowly rebuilding what we'd lost. Today, he'd asked to come here with me. Hello, Mother, he said, voice thick with emotion. I should have visited sooner? My phone buzzed. Another news alert about Quentin. He'd been arrested in Dubai, trying to use fake documents to access frozen accounts. Meredith had already fled to Europe with whatever she'd managed to salvage from the wreckage of their lives. Did you see the news? Dad asked. I nodded. Karma has a way of catching up. That it does. He straightened up, adjusting his now worn tie. I have something to tell you. I got a job offer yesterday, small consulting firm, helping companies transition to sustainable practices. Dad, that's wonderful. They found me through you, actually. Said if I taught you everything you know about business, I must be worth hiring. He smiled wryly. I told them you taught me more than I ever taught you. A familiar voice called from behind us. Jessica, I thought I might find you here. We turned to see Virgil approaching, carrying a folder. Your grandmother left instructions to give you this after certain conditions were met, he said, handing me the folder. You've exceeded all of them. Inside was a letter, written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. My dearest Jessica, if you're reading this, you've done more than simply claim your inheritance. You've earned it. You've built something meaningful, something sustainable. But more importantly, you've learned the lesson I hoped you would. That true success comes not from what we're given, but from what we create. I'm sorry I had to be secretive about the trust fund, but I needed you to find your own strength. Your father had to learn his lesson too, though I suspect his will be harder. Remember, legacy isn't about money or power. It's about impact. Make yours count. All my love, Grandma. Tears blurred my vision as I passed the letter to my father. He read it silently, then folded it carefully. She knew, he said quietly. She knew I would fail you, and she prepared for it. She knew you could learn from it, I corrected. Just like she knew I needed to lose everything to build something better. Virgil cleared his throat. There's more. Your grandmother left instructions for a charitable foundation to be established once you proved yourself. The paperwork is ready. She wanted you to lead it. I stared at him. A foundation? To help young entrepreneurs, especially women, start sustainable businesses. He smiled. She believed in paying it forward. My father touched the headstone gently. That sounds exactly like her. Looking between my grandmother's grave and the folder in my hands, I felt everything come full circle. She hadn't just given me an escape route, she'd given me a mission. Dad, I said suddenly, would you like to help with the foundation? Your experience could be valuable. He looked startled, then deeply moved. You'd trust me with that? Trust is earned, I replied. Just like success, but everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. Virgil handed me a pen. Shall we make it official? As I signed the foundation documents on my grandmother's grave, I felt a profound sense of peace. My father stood beside me, not as the man who had betrayed me, but as someone learning to be better. Somewhere in Europe, Meredith and Quentin were facing the consequences of their actions. And here I was, building something new again, not out of revenge or spite, but out of hope. What would you name it? My father asked. I looked at my grandmother's name on the headstone, remembering her strength, her foresight, her belief in earning one's way. The Legacy Foundation, I decided. Because true legacy isn't what we inherit, it's what we build. The autumn wind picked up, scattering leaves around us. In that moment, I could almost feel my grandmother's approval. She'd known all along that losing my inheritance would lead me to something greater. Not just success, but understanding. Not just wealth, but wisdom. And as I stood there between my father and my grandmother's grave, holding the future of a new foundation in my hands, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, building better, and helping others do the same. That was the real inheritance my grandmother had left me, and I intended to make it count.